What's up, guys? It's Illuminostic. Hopefully I fixed the echo. Sorry if not. But I just saw this. I was actually going to do a different live stream tonight and talk about, we're obviously in the midst of another psychedelic revolution, or you could just call it a renaissance, I guess. But this time I think it's a revolution. It has to be a revolution. We're in too much trouble. And that's what they were going for the last time. Obviously, things got derailed. I think, people didn't necessarily know what they were doing. Of course, I'm talking about the 1960s in case it's not clear. And, they didn't really fail. They got a lot of things moving. But eventually that momentum, I think, got absorbed back into the matrix machine. And so here we are, 2024, and it's looking a whole lot like 1959 in a lot of ways. Lots of race stuff as part of the cultural narrative. People are really, really divided. There's, really stupid wars on the horizon. Psychedelics are blowing up. And there's a Kennedy running for election. And, a lot of you that follow my content might say, like, well, Illuminostic. Well, in fact, some of you have said this. You ought to know better, if you have any kind of consciousness at all, then you know better than to think that we can do anything with the political system in the United States. And that is my overall feeling. However, only the madman is absolutely certain. And I think that ruling out possibilities completely, especially when it doesn't do any harm, we got nothing to lose at this point, right? To allow those possibilities to exist. And, the more I watch this thing with RFK Jr., roll along, the more interesting it is, if nothing else. It gives me some kind of pleasure and satisfaction and hope to see somebody on that level telling the truth. This guy talks about everything that, if I was in his position, basically, on just about everything, I would say what he says. Bringing the troops back to the United States. I've been saying forever, like, why don't we just have like hella hard defense, so that it's just ridiculous to attack, because you're always in the wrong if you're on the offensive and that sort of thing. It's like, I never thought I would hear a politician talking about ayahuasca favorably. This dude does not care about politics. It's super obvious that he is probably has a vendetta because he feels, and probably correctly so, that they killed his father. I would say it's near certainty that they killed his uncle, President John F. Kennedy, and there's definitely reason to suspect foul play even with his both of his cousins. Jackie Onassis buried two of her sons. And so it seems to me that, in my personal agenda right now is to try to fortify myself and find the motivation and the strength to gather my forces for another blow, and to try to join the efforts to bring sanity to Earth, to whatever extent we're capable, and to see if we can avert the consequences of the chaostrophe that we've been living through. And so I found this speech when I was getting ready to do my normal stream. And when I saw it says that he eviscerates the DNC, I was like, oh no, let's watch this and do a reaction real quick. So it's only 11 minutes long. I haven't watched any of it. If it starts out slow, we'll skip it a little bit maybe. But I'm definitely kind of excited to hear this and see what this dude is saying, because I've never heard a politician talk like this in my life. You guys know I would not endorse a fucking politician ever. But this dude is kind of putting me in a position where I just don't have a choice. He knows stories about LSD that I'm the only other person that I've ever heard tell. So I just can't. I can't not throw my hat in the ring with this dude.
And I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak to the New Hampshire State Senate. My family has a long history and deep history in this state, going back to my great-grandparents, Honey Fitz and Patrick Kennedy. My grandfather, Joseph Kennedy, spent his summer camps at Lake Winoke up in Wolfsboro. I grew up camping and hiking every summer and every winter in New Hampshire, hiking the presidential range. I talked with Speaker Packard and saw his beautiful photographs of some of those peaks. I told him that I'd spent many nights on Mount Washington in the huts in the middle of the winter skiing Tuckerman's Ravine. I hiked in the summer times the presidentials, but also Osceola, Tri-Pyramid, Mount Carrigan, Mount Flume, and many, many others. My brothers cut trails for their summer job at Waterville Valley, and I'm very proud that Tommy Corcoran named the steepest slope at Waterville after my father, who loved to ski there as well. I'm here because I am going to participate in this primary in this state. I opposed the DNC's decision to evict New Hampshire from the First Nation status, which is so important, I think, to our country. It is more than a tradition. New Hampshire plays a critical role in vetting candidates for the rest of the country.
Dude's voice is really good. It's like a legitimate problem. It's going to be hard to overcome that. Just like it's hard to listen to him talk.
Other parts of the United States, the states are content with having politicians come in with money that they've gotten from billionaires and carpet bombing the state from 30,000 feet with advertising, or staging occasionally rallies that are heavily orchestrated, where the crowds are heavily screened and they're kind of a kabuki theater of democracy. But here, politicians get real democracy. They encounter people, they have to go to the hair salons, the barber shops, the diners, the gas stations. They have to talk to the 80-year-old lady who reads the Financial Times and The Economist every week and ask them a question and a follow-up question and another follow-up question that they will never get from CNN. They will never get it from the New York Times even. And it's retail politics. And they are vetting our candidates the same way that they would vet a city council candidate or a local mayor. And they do it for the rest of the country. And the other thing that's very important about New Hampshire is that 42% of the people in this state are registered independents. It's the highest of any state. And the importance of that right now is that those are people who are critical thinkers, they're independent thinkers, and they're able to step outside of that fixed, paralyzing iceberg of partisanship that has our country at each other's throats. They're able.
Now, what was I saying, man? I mean, I don't think I've ever heard in my life a president talk about the need to get past party politics. You know, they talk about themselves needing to do that sometimes, but I cannot remember ever hearing a U.S. president say that critical thinkers and independent party people are important. You know what I mean? And I definitely agree with that. And it's crazy to hear this guy reference the fact that people's minds, I mean, he called it the iceberg of partisan politics, they're frozen in these indoctrinated states and they cannot escape it. And it's just absolutely essential that that happens.
To look at candidates without the ideology blocking their vision and really judge the candidates on what they say and be open to new ideas that are not locked in that ideological razor grip. Right now, it's particularly important at New Hampshire that we have a real democracy and a democratic election in New Hampshire. There's so many Americans who believe that the system now is rigged, the economic system, but also the political system, that the elections are fixed. New Hampshire has the gold standard for political elections. People don't question the results. And we ought to be, the Democratic Party particularly, ought to be making this election a template for democracy to our country and to the rest of the world. And say, we're going to have a real democracy where candidates meet human beings, are questioned by them, have town halls, and deal with all of the difficulties of retail politics. And we need to show the American people that is particularly important at this time for another reason. And I believe that the motto of the granted state, live free and die, is not just a motto. The many people in New Hampshire take that personally. They have a fierce pride in liberty. Over 500 New Hampshire men died in the American Revolution to give us our freedoms, to give us our rights, along with 25,000 elsewhere in our country. And today, those rights are under attack like never before in our history. In the last 3 years, there's been an all-out assault on the Bill of Rights. We now have, for the first time, the government participating in censorship of political dissent, of people who are criticizing federal policies. We saw churches closed. We saw freedom of worship threatened. Every church in this country was closed for a year without any scientific citation, without any democratic process, no notice and comment, public hearings. All of that was just abolished. And bureaucrats just decided to close all the churches. And they went after freedom of assembly. They shut down. They said, we have to social distance. We have to lock ourselves in our house. They went after the Fifth Amendment rights to property rights. They closed down 3.3 million businesses in this country with no due process, no just compensation. They went after the Fourth Amendment guarantees against warrantless searches and seizures with all this intrusive government track and trace surveillance, and Americans had to show their medical records before leaving their homes or entering a public building. And they abolished jury trials for whole classes of defendants. So for the people in the pharmaceutical industry or the medical cartel, no matter how grievous your injury, no matter how negligent their conduct or reckless, Americans could not sue them for the redress. The Seventh Amendment is very simple. It says, no American shall be deprived of the right of a jury before a trial of their peers in cases or controversies exceeding $25. There is no pandemic exception. And the framers knew all about pandemics and epidemics. There was two epidemics during the Revolutionary War, a malaria epidemic that decimated the armies of Virginia, a smallpox epidemic that affected New Hampshire at the very time when Benedict Arnold's armies conquered Montreal, and they had to withdraw from Montreal because their troop strength was so low because of smallpox. Otherwise, today, Canada would be part of the United States. The framers knew that. They also, between the end of the Revolution and the ratification of the Bill of Rights, there were epidemics in every city in this country, smallpox epidemics, cholera epidemics, yellow fever epidemics that killed tens of thousands of people, including many of the family members of the framers.
Before we get too much further, and I know most of you guys are aware of this, but let's just take note of the fact that, they actually, prior to the pandemic really getting moving, they actually passed a law that it was impossible to sue the pharmaceutical companies over vaccines. You guys probably all know about vaccine court. This is just, I can't even believe I'm saying these words. I keep forgetting the algorithm's going to get me for this. See what I mean, though? What he's talking about with the censorship. And, I think he's actually avoided a lot of these words, too. He's being very smart and thinking about how he's got to play the algorithm. But, yeah. For them to do that and then mandate or nearly mandate, manipulate and cajole and threaten, people when they have taken away their right to legal recourse against, for harm. This is a human rights violation on a level that is just nearly incomprehensible.
And yet they did not put an epidemic exception in the United States Constitution. They wrote that document for hard times not for easy times. During the Civil War, when the Confederate government was sending agents provocateur to every American city, northern city, to drum up draft riots, Abraham Lincoln tried to arrest the Confederates when they came in. They knew who they were. And he suspended habeas corpus. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roger Taney, said you can't do it. Even if the life of the nation is at stake, you cannot do it. In the Civil War, there were 659,000 people who died. It's the equivalent of 7,200,000 today, much worse than the pandemic. And yet the Supreme Court said you cannot suspend the Constitution no matter what. It's more important than anything. And today, now, we have all these new surveillance technologies. We have digital currencies, AI technology, which is frightening, GPS technologies, like 400,000 low-level satellites that are going to look at every square inch of the Earth every day. It has been the ambition of every totalitarian regime in history to control every aspect of human behavior. They've never been able to do it, but they can do it now. And it's so important that we counter that threat by strengthening and fortifying our democratic institutions, not weakening them. And that begins with the Bill of Rights, and it includes the New Hampshire primary. And I want to tell you, I'm going to be in this state fighting to win every vote I can in New Hampshire, Republican, Democratic, and Independent. And when I'm elected president and I'm head of the Democratic Party, I'm going to pour concrete on the notion that New Hampshire is first in the nation. Thank you very much.
So our tradition has been, Mr. Kennedy.
All right. Well, I mean, that's amazing. That's, what I guess I would have hoped, but never actually expected to hear from an American politician after all the shit that we've been through. I'm almost speechless, what he pointed out about how all these totalitarian regimes of the past, oh shit, where did I go? Okay, there we go. These totalitarian regimes of the past were not able to control mankind or their population, but they're able to now. That shit is real, and I'm nervous. I really am. I'm legitimately nervous for the first time in my life, because I've had this overwhelming confidence that I could not lose, that my side could not lose. I always equated consciousness and the evolution of consciousness and the eventual, corrosion of what might be called conservative values, but I would like to choose my words more carefully if I can find better ones. The old matrix mind, religions and all of this stuff, that it was like trying to put your thumb over water coming out of the end of a hose, and eventually it just comes out, you just can't do it. And that's what I used to think when I watched like President Reagan and his wife, Nancy, talking about. She said at one point, drug dealers should be shot on sight. No trial. One of the things I didn't mention when Kennedy was talking, he was saying that one of the things that they're trying to take away is our right to a jury trial. And the reality is that's already happened. Obama had 3 United States citizens executed by drone strike without a trial. Now, run that back a couple times in your head. You know what I mean? No trial in the United States, killed. That's not supposed to be able to happen. And, you have to look at historical precedents for things. They told us that they would not use the Patriot Act on American citizens. They did. So all of this other stuff, they said it's for your protection. It won't be used against you. And it's funny, as soon as I said something about Obama, I saw one person drop off. That always happens. As people love that guy so much, and they still, a lot of them can't deal with the fact that it was just all a ruse. We have Trumpers doing that now. They believe in that guy way more than they should, for sure. But yeah, they said, the Patriot Act is for your protection. We won't use it against Americans. They did use it on Americans. So what about all this other stuff now that's supposed to be for our protection? Don't worry, we're not going to use it against you. You know what I mean? We've heard that before. And granted, they're not using the Patriot Act to go around and just kill all kinds of people all over the place. These guys were suspected of being involved with terrorism legitimately. But it doesn't matter. Like RFK Jr. was saying, you can't. The whole point of not being able to suspend the Constitution is that, people that will take advantage of humanity, of their own citizens, of their own families, of their own children, if they have an opportunity, they will avail themselves of it. So you cannot suspend the Constitution. That was the whole point, and people make the argument that, it's been however many hundreds of years. Maybe we shouldn't be concerned about the opinions of slave owners from 400 years ago. But that's really just complete dumbfuckery. It's so besides the point. And, the point is that if you give an inch, they will take a mile. And you barely even have a mile to give. Most of us don't. So it's going to be an interesting year. My guess is that they will shut Kennedy down well before any primaries. There will be no debate with Joe Biden, because can you imagine how humiliating? And this guy doesn't seem to have any muzzle at all. So there's nothing stopping him from calling them out on all their most, corrupt, horrific, and the crazy thing about that is that it doesn't even really seem to matter. Tulsi Gabbard already did that a few years back. She had Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on the Democratic debates, and she said all that shit to them. That all the shit that they had done about, Joe Biden is the only question. And Kamala Harris actually said this. The only thing we need to ask about Joe Biden is if he's more of a rapist or a racist. And now she's literally his running mate, his vice president. Can you imagine people actually voting for people that are that much of a couple of pieces of shit? That this woman is black and a woman, and she says before she's, nominated as his running mate, the only thing we need to know about Joe Biden is he more of a rapist or more of a racist, and then she just is there standing beside him. Oh, no, I was just kidding. He's a great man or whatever. And even more horrifying than that is all the people in the audience in the United States that actually saw that happen and then still sided with these people. It's beyond terrifying. Everybody was watching that. Everyone saw that, and Tulsi Gabbard called out Kamala Harris on her slavery and shit. She kept a guy on death row for 18 years that she knew was innocent. Judges called her evil and horrific and monstrous and all of this shit. It's insane. It's completely fucking insane, and it's actually fucking real. But my point is that I sometimes I wonder if it even matters, because they did get called out already. And it's like nobody saw it. Like RFK was saying in that speech, their fucking brains are so frozen by political indoctrination that something like that can happen right in front of them, and they'll just act like they didn't see it. I mean, everyone should go back. If they're still even on YouTube, I wouldn't be surprised if they've been taken down. But the debates from when it was Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris, she called her out on everything in front of the whole world. And Kamala Harris called Joe Biden a rapey racist and then became his running partner. Like nothing happened. So, that's, and I'm trying to remain positive here, you know what I mean? But I feel like people are so brainwashed at this point that it doesn't really matter what gets exposed. It doesn't matter, who gets caught lying and what the damages were, what the repercussions were. They're all, when I post things like today, I posted something about how the CDC had changed some major guideline about masks and the information and how, hateful everyone was, and people just ignore it. When you call people out on this really core stuff that's like just super, super, super obvious, and it's just like it's too much for them to handle, and they just act like it's not there. So it's a really delicate dance I think we're going to have to do to really get people to step outside of their brainwashing. I mean, that's obviously why I'm such a big advocate of psychedelics. I don't see anything else doing it. That's the only way to undo all of this indoctrination, is to restore neural plasticity to people's minds so they can unlearn this stuff and relearn new stuff. That's it. So, I mean, basically what I'm kind of anticipating and what I'm going to work towards, and, obviously this is the moment I feel like I've devoted my entire life to since I was a child, literally, like expecting this eventual sort of downfall of the old world and the emergence of a new paradigm. I've literally been preparing for this and expecting it since childhood, and here we are. I think at the make or break moment, at least. I don't know if it's really actually going to succeed or not. I mean, you never do, especially when the odds are this long and things are this complicated and sophisticated. But as the song says, line up a long shot, maybe try it 2 times, maybe more. Sure the hell ain't got nothing better to do. So, those of you guys that are just tuning in, definitely go back and watch that RFK speech. I mean, it's not like it's nothing you haven't heard, but it's fucking crazy to see an American presidential candidate talking like that. It's really like the most positive development that we could have hoped for. Except that, and Joe Rogan asked him this, like, don't you think they're just going to shoot you? And he's like, yeah, kind of, basically. I mean, of course they're going to kill him, So, I don't know, bucket of popcorn. Watching Rome burn in 5D. Well, anyways, guys, I guess that's a wrap. Unless somebody's got something they want me to talk about, I'll give you a minute to pop something into the comments. But it's the end of the world as we know it. So hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, and I'll see you again tomorrow.